Caitlin Clark could be returning this week after all. Guys, for this one here.
All right, brace yourselves, because it truly seems like Caitlin Clark could be making her long-awaited return to the court this very week. This isn't just any update. It's breaking news coming straight out of Indiana, and it has already set the basketball world on fire. The Indiana Fever have just finalized a roster move, and believe me, it's the kind of decision that has the entire WNBA community buzzing with excitement and speculation.
It's going to be scary from a backcourt standpoint because the two of them with the ball in their hands, without the ball.
That's a threat.
And as a post player, your eyes have to light up because if there's that much attention from the backcourt,
they're going to find you.
If you set screens, if you set early drags in transition, sky's the limit.
And just like that, Caitlin Clark's name has once again taken center stage in the headlines. Fans everywhere are going absolutely wild, trying to piece together what this latest update could mean for her future. The big question echoing across social media right now is simple. Could we finally be on the verge of seeing Clark step back onto the court? I'm going to break it all down for you and explain every detail you need to know. But before we dive in, let's talk. Do you think this move is the signal that Caitlin Clark's long-awaited comeback is officially underway?
2025, according to the WNBA transactions page, the Indiana Fever released Kyra Lambert. So if that is indeed the end of Kyra Lambert's Indiana Fever tenure, it did not last very long. It was just last week we were figuring out who Kyra Lambert was.
So here's the real shocker. The Indiana Fever have officially parted ways with Kyra Lambert. Now, to the casual fan, this might seem like a minor roster update, just another small headline tucked away in the back of the sports section. But to Fever loyalists, and honestly to anyone following the WNBA closely, this move feels like an absolute bombshell. You simply don't release a player in the middle of the season unless there's a major shakeup on the horizon. And at the very center of all the speculation, the one name driving every conversation, you already know it, Caitlin Clark.
It's Kyra Maxwell, and she didn't even get a thank you post. She didn't even get a thank you post from the Indiana Fever. They didn't even get a thank you, Kyra Maxwell. She didn't get a thank you post. But yeah, a lot of people are celebrating this because they...
Let's be real about it. Clark hasn't stepped foot on the court in quite some time. And the truth is, every single game she's missed has only built more tension and uncertainty among fans. The fact that she didn't even travel with the team last week poured even more fuel on the fire of speculation. Now the pressing question is this. Are the Fever simply playing it extra safe with her recovery? Or is there a bigger strategy at play? A carefully crafted plan to reintroduce her at the most dramatic, spotlight-stealing moment possible? Because here's the twist. Lambert is officially gone, which leaves a valuable roster spot wide open. Unless Indiana is quietly working on some secret overseas signing that no one has caught wind of yet, every clue, every calculation, seems to circle right back to Caitlin Clark.
I know Rudy from Coming Out the Podcast. Shout out to Rudy. Rudy did a whole entire video breaking down what Holly Rose said. Is Caitlin Clark coming back within the next week or so? I personally wouldn't bring her back against the Minnesota Lynx, but also, depending on the severity of Sophie Cunningham's injury, I might not bring her back, period, for the rest of the season. I might play if Sophie can't come back, if it's not serious, then maybe we are talking about Caitlin Clark coming back. I did say when she went down and this period of time started to get longer and longer and longer and longer, by the time she's...
But here's the thing. WNBA fans aren't just accepting this news at surface level. Not at all. Social media is already exploding with wild takes and outlandish theories. Some people are convinced this move means the Fever are bringing in Kennedy Carter, which honestly makes zero sense considering she literally just signed elsewhere. Others believe Indiana is simply trying to distract everyone from Sophie Cunningham's health concerns. Yet, if you cut through all that noise and focus on the actual reality, the evidence all lines up toward one conclusion. Caitlin Clark's return is much closer than anyone originally thought. Let's be honest here. Kyra Lambert wasn't exactly a major factor on this roster. She logged a single minute across 2 games. That's it. That's not part of a rotation. That's not a trusted bench option. That's someone filling space in practice. The Fever gave her an opportunity, and it clearly didn't stick. Now they're moving on, which is fair enough. But what makes this truly fascinating is the timing. They could have made this decision weeks ago without anyone batting an eye. Instead, they pull the trigger right now, just before two of their most important matchups of the season against the Minnesota Lynx. And that timing feels far too calculated to be random.
Question is, when? Are we really bringing her back against the Minnesota Lynx? Would that be the smartest idea? No, not really. Not really. Let's take a look. The Indiana Fever have been playing through the 2025 season under head coach Stephanie White. Indiana is led by Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and several other stars. While they have one of the best rosters in the league, they've been missing Clark. Clark has missed a majority of the season, currently working through a groin injury. The last time Clark was on the floor was a matchup against the Connecticut Sun on July 16th, while the Fever were on a
We're already a month into the season, and make no mistake, the Lynx have been nothing short of unstoppable. They're sitting comfortably at the top of the league, bulldozing opponents with a dominant 28-5 record. Indiana, on the other hand, knows the brutal truth. Without their star power, they simply don't stand a chance against that kind of machine. Sure, credit where it's due. They've fought their way back up to 6th place in the standings, which is a remarkable turnaround considering how shaky things looked in the early weeks. But let's be honest, if they have any hope of staying in the playoff conversation, they need Caitlin Clark back on that court. End of story. No one else on that roster has the ability to shift momentum, to electrify the game, quite like she does. And trust me, the Fever's front office is well aware of it. They know exactly how crucial she is to their survival.
Is a comment that Scott Agnes made on his YouTube channel. Scott Agnes was replying to someone else's comment who said, "Just can't wait until Cece is back. She's the most dynamic, electric player in the WNBA. Great job, Lexi." And then Scott Agnes replied and he said, "Have patience, at least several more weeks." Now, Scott Agnes is a beat reporter for the Indiana Fever. He has been covering them relentlessly all season, and we have gotten a lot of great information from Scott over the season. And I actually went to his YouTube channel and just kind of skimmed through the comments to see if there was anything else. There was one other reply where he was replying to someone and basically said, like, "You have to trust me or just trust me." It's up to viewers' discretion. It's up to the fans if they want to believe what he's saying, but several more weeks pretty much puts Caitlin Clark to coming back at the very end.
So, let's address the question that's got everyone buzzing. Is Indiana truly preparing to push Caitlin Clark back into the spotlight against the league's strongest squad? Or is this all just a clever smokescreen designed to keep fans hanging on a hope while the medical team quietly buys more time? Because honestly, throwing Clark onto the floor against Minnesota right now feels downright reckless. That's the very definition of a trial by fire. You're asking her to step into the Lions' cage and somehow walk out with 25 points and a string of highlight-worthy assists. The Fever need to be far more calculated than that, don't they? But then again, this is Indiana we're talking about. The same organization where fans constantly wonder if Amber Cox and Stephanie White are even aligned. Half the time it feels like one is planning for the distant horizon while the other is scrambling to grab wins immediately. And that tug-of-war bleeds straight into their play on the court. Now, cutting Lambert might not seem like a seismic decision on its own, but once you connect it to Clark's looming return, it starts to look like this chaotic blend of desperation and blind optimism. Exactly the cocktail Indiana has been serving all season long. And here's the thing, Clark isn't some wide-eyed freshman anymore. She's in her sophomore year now, already hardened by the chaos. She's seen how brutal this league can be when veterans treat your body like open season. She knows the price her fame demands, the physical grind, the relentless media glare, the never-ending circus that shadows her every move. Coming back at this moment isn't just about whether her body is healed. It's about proving she can shoulder the weight of an entire franchise under pressure that would break most players in half. Of course, fans are hanging on to every breadcrumb like it's gospel. The moment Indiana climbed from 7th to 6th in the standings, the internet erupted with, "Clark's coming back," as if the league table somehow doubles as a medical report. It's a comforting narrative, but let's be honest, Indiana's performance without her has been wobbly at best. That jump in the rankings doesn't prove anything except how desperately this team is counting the days until her return. And the upcoming schedule? Absolutely unforgiving. Minnesota twice in back-to-back games, then Seattle breathing down their necks, followed by the Sparks, the Valkyries, and Phoenix, with Chicago and Washington sprinkled in like landmines. If you're Caitlin Clark, you're probably asking yourself, when is the least painful moment to come back? Because opening against Minnesota feels like a guaranteed migraine. Seattle? Forget it. They'll take it personally and make her first game a war. Maybe the Sparks or Valkyries offer a softer landing, but even that's no easy ride. The catch is, Indiana might not give her that luxury of choice. They may decide to throw her back into the fire early, and that gamble could change everything. Meanwhile, fans can't help themselves. They're glued to their phones, refreshing Indiana's socials, checking Scott Agnes' feed every 5 minutes, and hammering insiders for even the tiniest scrap of news. But here's the kicker. Nobody's talking. Not Chloe BBY, not Sophie Cunningham, not the coaches. Radio silence. And in this league, silence almost always means one of two things. Either the news is bad and they're stalling, or they're about to detonate a bombshell announcement. And honestly, the WNBA could use that shockwave. This league is starving for a storyline that can break through the noise. And right now, Caitlin Clark is the only player who moves the needle every single night. Love her or hate her, she makes people tune in. And that's exactly why her return feels less like a question of if and more like a question of when. She sells tickets. She fills arenas. And if Indiana is finally preparing to put her back on the floor, don't expect some quiet little press release buried on page 3. Expect fireworks. Expect non-stop highlight packages. Expect the league to squeeze every drop of attention they can out of her return. Because make no mistake, Caitlin Clark is the headline, and the WNBA knows it. But here's the cynical side of the story. What if the Fever are just dangling this hope as a distraction from their much bigger issues? Cutting Kyra Lambert gave fans something to chew on, sure, but it didn't magically fix their lack of depth. It doesn't erase the uncertainty surrounding Sophie Cunningham's health, and it definitely doesn't solve the ongoing tug-of-war between the coaching staff. All that roster move really did was clear a chair at the table. And if that seat isn't for Clark, then what's the point? Adding another role player isn't changing the trajectory of this season. That's exactly where the frustration boils over for fans. They've been through this roller coaster too many times already, watching the Fever mismanage rotations, fumble player development, and collapse in crucial moments. Now, with Clark's comeback hanging in the balance, every decision the front office makes feels 10 times heavier. One wrong step, and the backlash will be brutal. And honestly, that's what makes this whole situation almost laughably transparent. Out of all the possible moves Indiana could make, the one big decision they roll out is cutting Kyra Lambert. No disrespect to her, but let's be real, this was never about Lambert. She was essentially just a placeholder, a seat warmer until Caitlin Clark was healthy enough to take her spot back. Everyone sees it, everyone knows it, and the Fever aren't fooling anyone. That's the cold, unforgiving reality of the WNBA. Half the time, these roster moves aren't about clever strategy or long-term development. They're about one thing: clearing space for the star. And in Indiana, there's only one name that fits that label: Caitlin Clark. Always Caitlin Clark. So now, Fever fans are buzzing like never before. WNBA Twitter is melting down, and every sports blog suddenly acts like they've been loyal Indiana insiders all along. And what's the common thread? The same line echoing everywhere: Caitlin Clark's return is happening sooner than anyone thought. And honestly, if you've been paying attention, the pieces fit together perfectly. Why else would Indiana make this move right now? This isn't the kind of shuffle you pull in the middle of an ordinary week unless you're clearing the runway for your franchise player. That's the part that makes the whole charade feel almost funny. Everyone is acting shocked, but deep down we all know the truth. The league can't afford to keep its biggest attraction sidelined much longer. Ticket sales? They hinge on Clark. Television ratings? She drives them. The hype machine? She is the engine. Without her, the Fever are just another middle-of-the-pack WNBA team trying to claw their way into 6th place. With her, suddenly ESPN is sending live crews. Every sports show runs a Caitlin Clark segment, and merchandise is flying off the shelves. Indiana knows what's on the line, and so does the league. And then there's the timing. That's where things get even more critical. The Fever's upcoming stretch is brutal. Minnesota twice, then Seattle, then the Sparks, and then the Valkyries. That's not just a tough schedule. It's a gauntlet, the kind of run that could bury their season if they don't have Clark leading the charge. Which is why every move, every rumor, every whisper feels bigger than basketball right now. So, the front office took one look at that brutal schedule and basically said, yeah, we need Caitlin back on the floor right now, or this stretch is going to eat us alive. And honestly, can you really blame them? Without Clark's deadly shooting, her uncanny ability to draw fouls, and the way she bends defenses just by stepping onto the court, this Fever squad doesn't stand a chance against the Lynx or the Storm. Even at less than 100%, her presence alone changes everything. That's how desperate Indiana is. But here's where it gets even crazier. This isn't just about basketball anymore. The Caitlin Clark saga has exploded into a full-blown cultural phenomenon where every move she makes, or doesn't make, becomes a headline. She sits out a game, it's on national news. She comes back, suddenly, it's a historic return. Someone fouls her too hard. Next thing you know, people are calling for federal investigations. Heck, you've even got politicians chiming in like it's a matter of national policy. Clark isn't just a player anymore. She's a storyline factory, a ratings juggernaut, and apparently, a political football rolled into one. And that's why when Indiana makes a roster move like this, the ripple effect is enormous. Fans are breaking it down like it's a Supreme Court decision. Insiders are scrambling to confirm whether the move was even legitimate. Because let's be honest, half of them didn't realize Kyra Lambert was on the roster in the first place. And the rest of the league? They're watching closely because Caitlin Clark's return isn't just about Indiana. It forces every single team in the WNBA to adjust their strategy the moment she steps back on the hardwood. That's the level of influence she carries. And it's exactly why this situation feels so much bigger than basketball. The moment Clark steps on the floor, everything shifts. Defenses collapse, spacing suddenly opens wide, and role players start looking like borderline stars simply because she's demanding double teams. And if you think Indiana doesn't realize that, you're kidding yourself. This entire move screams a mix of desperation and cold calculation. The Fever aren't just trying to survive this stretch. They're trying to send a message. To the league, to the fans, and maybe even to Caitlin herself. We're all in on this season. And truthfully, do they even have another option? Indiana without Caitlin Clark is like Netflix with no shows. You can keep the lights on, but nobody's watching. Sure, you could argue maybe this roster move isn't directly tied to her return, that Indiana might be bluffing. But let's be honest, how many times are we going to play that game? Every single decision this franchise makes has Clark's fingerprints all over it. She's not just the centerpiece of their roster. Right now, she's the centerpiece of the entire WNBA. Whether the Fever want to admit it publicly or not, every move they make is about amplifying her impact. And here's the part people often overlook, the fans. Fever fans have been starving for something to believe in. Every headline, every rumor about Clark feels like oxygen after months of holding their breath. A move like this doesn't just tweak the roster. It reignites hope, it fuels excitement, and it reminds everyone why Indiana is suddenly at the center of basketball conversations nationwide. Fever fans have lived through years of mediocrity, season after season of disappointment, and suddenly, with Caitlin Clark in town, there's finally something real to believe in. So of course, they're running wild with speculation. They're buying tickets in bulk, loading up their calendars, and already whispering about a playoff push. Is it premature? Probably. But can anyone really blame them? After suffering through so many empty seasons, Caitlin Clark doesn't just feel like a superstar. She feels like the savior they've been waiting for. And this isn't just about Indiana anymore. The WNBA as a whole is buzzing, not because the Fever made a small roster adjustment, but because the ripple effects of Caitlin Clark's return will touch every single corner of the league. Every team, every coach, every player, they're all going to have to adjust the moment she's back on the court. For years, the WNBA has been desperate for mainstream attention, fighting to break through the noise. Now, they finally have it. The catch? It all revolves around one player. And when one player has that much influence, the entire league can start to look a little shaky. So while Indiana pats itself on the back for making bold roster decisions, let's be honest about what this really means. Caitlin Clark is about to step back into the spotlight. And when she does, the league will squeeze every last drop of attention out of it. Expect primetime TV specials, viral highlight reels, nonstop ESPN debates, endless social media coverage. The whole machine will be running at full speed. And sure, it exposes just how dependent the WNBA has become on one player. But at the same time, you can't deny its brilliant business. Because here's the truth. The Indiana Fever can make as many announcements as they want, but there's only one announcement that actually matters. Caitlin Clark's return. And when that moment arrives, it won't just reshape the Fever season. It will send shockwaves through the entire WNBA. So what do you think? Will Caitlin's return save Indiana's season? Or will the pressure be too much even for her to handle? Let me know your thoughts below, because one way or another, history is about to be written.